we will not see a straight line in a log-log graph, because this means a power law. And if you have an exponential, it will start to look like curved. So it will not follow a straight line, it will look curved, the adoption. And instead it's a straight line. So it means it follows a power law. It means there is not this mythical time when everybody will adopt Bitcoin. That is a fantasy, it's an illusion, that it doesn't exist. It's actually a better message. You know why? Because instead of having this mythical event that who knows when it's going to happen, when everybody finally adopts Bitcoin, Bitcoin simply does what it's doing from the beginning. It doesn't need to do anything else, and it doesn't need to be adopted by a majority and nothing. Bitcoin needs to do what it's already doing now to go wherever it needs to go, like, for example, to 1 million, 10 million, and so on.
There's a common belief that Bitcoin will only truly succeed once it hits some mythical moment of mass adoption. When governments embrace it, Wall Street bows down, or your grandma starts stacking sats. But what if that moment never comes? And more importantly, what if it doesn't need to? Bitcoin's strength may lie in the fact that it's not waiting on anyone. It's already doing what it was designed to do, growing, maturing, and proving itself over time. Physicist Giovanni Santostasi breaks this down with a refreshing take. Bitcoin's adoption follows a power law, not an exponential curve. That might sound technical, but the implication is simple. Bitcoin isn't on a path towards some dramatic, sudden explosion of acceptance. Instead, it's on a steady, consistent journey forward. And that's actually more powerful. It means Bitcoin doesn't need to be embraced by the masses overnight. It doesn't require a grand event to validate its existence or future. It just needs to keep doing what it's already doing. That's the beauty of it. Bitcoin isn't a bet on mass hysteria. It's a bet on mathematical consistency, digital scarcity, and time. Whether or not the world wakes up all at once doesn't matter. Bitcoin's already moving, with or without them. Let's watch clips from Giovanni Santostasi's explosive interview to gain more insight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for additional in-depth content. Thanks for joining us again. Enjoy the video.
So, there is math all around us, and a lot of this math is a power law. So this is why I say understanding Bitcoin as a power law puts you inside this framework of understanding Bitcoin as if it was a natural phenomenon, if it was something that actually belongs to this huge universe of regularities and patterns, right? So it completely changes your way of understanding Bitcoin if you really spend the time to understand what we are talking about. Okay, we have this graph, right? So we are showing 3 panels. The lower one is the price versus the time, right? We are taking the log of the price versus the log of time. This is the more familiar power law that people have seen before. And like I say, the slope here is 571, right? Something close to 6. As a scientist, you are asking yourself where that number comes from. What is due to? Has to be some kind of cause that is producing this behavior, right? So I already discovered these power laws in the past, but I didn't put them together in a coherent picture. In fact, this one with the addresses, I discovered all the way to 2012. And what is telling us, right, in this case, we are having addresses as a function of time. So we have the log of addresses and the log of time, right? And you see, it's a straight line. It's very close to a straight line. Like always, you have some noise, we know that in Bitcoin we have this bubble, so sometimes we go above, sometimes we go below. But in general, you can see it's even a better straight line than the price itself. Now, if you measure the slope of that line, it's close to 3.1. Now, what does it mean? So addresses are, in Bitcoin, we have all this on-chain information. Addresses is one of the closest things to adoption that we have. It's not a direct measure because, and it's actually a good thing that, when you buy Bitcoin, somebody is now asking you your name and, your address, right? Your physical address, that will not be good. But we have this proxy that is addresses, right? So because to make some transaction, you have to create an address, you have to send it. So it's a measure of the activity of a network, right? And so if we measure it over time and you plot it in this way, it's clear there is a very precise pattern there. That is a power law because it's a straight line in a log-log graph. You measure the slope, it's 3. So there are a lot of consequences. One of these is, just by looking at this graph, is that Bitcoin, it's what is called scale invariant, right? So it means that it doesn't matter at which scale you're looking. If you're looking at the behavior in few weeks, in few months, in few years, Bitcoin has done the same thing, because same thing means it followed this pattern. It never changed. That is something that it drives me crazy because a lot of these so-called experts, right? For example, when you hear Seyr talking about, or maybe some big entity like an institution like Fidelity or whatever, and we make this presentation, I saw several of them, right? There are these people that are some higher up in the company, and they are supposed to know this stuff very well. They say things that are not true. Like, for example, I don't know why, because maybe they don't have the right tool to look at, the right framework, like Elon says. They make these claims, Bitcoin follow an S curve of adoption, right? That is so wrong, because you can see there is no S curve here. It's a straight line. What do we mean with that? They mean this, right? They mean if Bitcoin followed a bell curve distribution where you have early innovators that are going to be a small minority, then you have going to have early adopters, right? So this looks like a bell curve, like a kind of like height, right? Most people are here. Robin will be over there, right? In fact, outside the graph, right? So tall. If this was height, right? But here we are talking adoption, right? So early innovators, right? These are the crazy people that bought Bitcoin when it was $1 or whatever. Then you have an early adopter, early majority. You see here there is a peak. There is going to be a peak, and it also give us some kind of scale, some kind of not scale, but typical time, right? There will be a certain time between the beginning and when we reach this late majority, right? And it's supposedly many people say we are not yet there. This is why they say, we are early, all these kind of things that are not the right way of thinking about Bitcoin. We are not early. In fact, in a moment, I tell you why we are late. We are almost done. This is what I say. If you look at it in the correct way, that is the mathematical way. So this is what they mean. They say, it's going to follow something like that. And why they say that? Because a lot of technologies, right? There are many graphs that show, like the refrigerator, the bicycle, the car, etc. They were adopted in this way. There was a certain number of early people, then there was a time when everybody was using it, right? That is kind of a peak here, right? Everybody at that point has a car, and then you're going to have less and less people because these are kind of the late majority, the laggards, right? So people that refuse to use a car or a refrigerator, and finally everybody does it, right? But these are smaller and smaller number as you go away from when everybody adopted it, right? Right now, if you're looking, almost everybody in the first world has a refrigerator, right? There are almost no people that don't have it at all. Maybe the Amish, I don't know if they use a refrigerator, probably not. So everybody's talking about this almost like a mythical event, right? When, there'll be a moment where everybody is going to adopt it, right? The majority of people are going to adopt it. And you see how the curve becomes kind of, here is a little bit less steep than they usually represented, but it's supposed to be kind of almost vertical here, right? So because the S-curve, what the S-curve represents, how is the S-curve related to this graph is nothing else than the sum. If you sum all these people, right, this is called, mathematically, this is called an integral, but it's basically a sum, right? So you sum. This represents the total. This represents what is called a distribution. That means how many people from here to there, how many people from here to there, how many people from, right? Imagine these beans, and I calculate how many people are in this category, how many people are in this category. This one is the current, is the running sum of everybody, right? And you see it goes up, it goes up, it goes up, and then when we arrive here, it kind of accelerates. If this curve was a little bit taller here, you will see almost a vertical S, right? And then as you add, see here it's kind of saturating, right? Because we are reaching almost everybody, 100%, right? And so as we reach that, it kind of saturates and then it flattens out, right?
Bitcoin isn't following a typical tech adoption curve. It's moving like a force of nature. Its growth pattern aligns with a power law, not an S-curve, meaning there's no dramatic tipping point where the whole world suddenly joins in. Instead, adoption is steady, predictable, and quietly relentless. This isn't about waiting for some future mass moment. It's about recognizing what's already unfolding. Bitcoin doesn't need to go viral to succeed. The pattern is already in motion. The curve isn't coming, you're already on it. Bitcoin isn't just growing, it's evolving like a living network. Its adoption mirrors how social systems, viruses, and even the internet spread, through power laws and deep connectivity. Each user, each interaction, adds complexity and value, just like neurons forming a brain. It's not about hype or headlines, it's about emergence. Bitcoin doesn't behave like a traditional asset, it behaves like an intelligent system organizing itself. Once you see it that way, you stop asking if it will survive and start asking what it's becoming. Let's watch more clips from the interview.
By the way, it turns out there are many phenomena that follow this power law adoption. For example, the internet. The internet is exactly that. I have a graph somewhere here where I can show how the internet and Bitcoin looks like. They are basically almost like parallel lines. So this is the internet, you see, this black line is the internet, and they fit it with the red line that is, the regression for that line. Notice, and this is Bitcoin. The blue line is Bitcoin, and they are both straight line in this graph, and they are parallel. That means the slope is very similar. And in fact, for Bitcoin is close to 3. It depends how you measure it, but it's basically a number close to 3. Internet to 6.3, very close, very
so
similar.
So Bitcoin is growing faster than the internet.
Bitcoin is going faster than the internet. That is amazing, but similar, right? That again, if you are a scientist and you see this similarity, you already know that it's not due by chance. There is some very precise process in how people organize themselves online, the interactions, etc., that make this phenomena very similar in nature. It's amazing, and there is no. This is why Bitcoin is not an asset. It's not gold. It's not silver. It's not, it's its own phenomena. It's this experiment that we are doing as humans. We are creating an alternative economical system, monetary system, where we are associating value with it, and it's its own entity. It's like a living organism. It's like a city. It's this clever, intelligent system. There are a lot of things that you're associating, consequences, because once you understand that it's the framework that tell us Bitcoin is alive, it has its own internal intelligence. This is what networks are about, right? If you're thinking what a network is, we study in physics network. Actually, Barabasi is another physicist that's created almost the science of a network. So we use a lot of tools to understand, from physics to understand network. It's basically, the definition is you have many different individual entities, like, for example, the cells in the body of computers or Bitcoiners, right? And then you have this whole where what matters is how the individual interact with each other. That is what makes different, right? So, for example, if you have a gas, you have all these atoms that are moving randomly, right? And you can write equations to describe this behavior, but a gas is not intelligent, right? It's just random behavior of particles. But now if these particles start to communicate with each other, they start to exchange information, they start to collaborate with each other, particles too small to simple to do that. But now take cells, right? You have cells that have their own internal operations, but then they talk to other cells and they exchange information. They do different things. They use resources. They work together. They collaborate. Now you have a network. That is what a network is, where you have individual plus exchange of information and coordination between the individuals. And, the internet is that, right? Because people communicate, exchange information, they organize, etc. And the characteristic of a network is that the behavior of a whole is much more complex and much more interesting and much more advanced than what the individual will suggest, right? If you look a bunch of cells and you put them in a container and they don't work together, they are just some organic material that does nothing, right? This is a dead brain, for example. But if you have a brain that is alive, where you have all the neurons communicating, exchange information, you can have Shakespeare, you can have, Einstein, you can have whatever beautiful discovery of the universe, right? This is what networks are about. And this is what Bitcoin is. This is the relevance and importance of having a framework, because it's not a model. This is what I'm trying to tell. Oh, it's just a model. No, it's not just a model. It's a way of understanding Bitcoin that doesn't exist anywhere else. Nobody else has this understanding of Bitcoin. It's really deep. The only way, the only reason the video we had was not the most popular is simply because people, and I know it sounds arrogant, but it doesn't have anything to do with me. It has to do with Bitcoin. Once you have this framework, then this should be the most important thing about Bitcoin. Everybody should talk about this. Like, okay, if Giovanni or anybody, because I'm not just the only one, other people join this field of research, even if 1/10 of what Giovanni is saying is true, it's one of the best way to dispel anybody that say, oh, it's a scam, it's a pyramid scheme, it's going to crash to zero. All these things are answered by understanding Bitcoin as a network, but not just a word that people throw, but understanding that really we have a math to show that it does behave like a network. All these are network property. It's not a chance that the internet, that is the best network example, technological network that you can imagine, and Bitcoin behaving in the same way. Look at this amazing slide, right? So it's a demonstration of that. And so once you have this framework, you can answer all these questions. So if we go back to the slides that we are analyzing before, these three, this first slide tells you Bitcoin is growing like a social network. In fact, I found many papers that study different types of social networks, and they show that both the nodes, so the addresses are the nodes, right? Because are a proxy for the number of users, and the users in the Bitcoin networks are the nodes, what are called the nodes of a network. And then you can measure the links, that is how well connected all these nodes are. There are different type of geometry and patterns. You can calculate that. And there is a theorem, you could call it a theorem, but a theoretical result that says the value of a network, this is called the Metcalfe law.
As Bitcoin trades just below its all-time high, excitement is building, but so is uncertainty. Analysts like Trading Shot and Rect Capital warn that time may be running out for another parabolic rally in this 4-year cycle. Based on historical patterns, Bitcoin typically sees its blow-off tops months after a halving event, but with no such move yet and only a few months potentially left, many wonder, is this the peak or just the calm before a late-cycle storm? While technical analysts look at Fibonacci channels and moving averages to project targets as high as $168,000, there's a deeper lens through which to view Bitcoin's behavior, one that Giovanni Santostasi has been championing. He argues that Bitcoin doesn't need a dramatic final pump to validate its growth. Instead, its trajectory follows a power law, the same mathematical pattern seen in natural systems and networks. In this view, Bitcoin isn't a typical market asset. It's a living, evolving network, much like the internet, growing through millions of user interactions rather than one-time hype events. This perspective flips the narrative. Whether or not we see another explosive leg up, Bitcoin is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, expanding organically within a predictable structure. If Santostasi is right, the lack of a parabolic rally isn't a warning sign. It's proof that Bitcoin is maturing. The signal isn't in the spike, it's in the structure. As we wrap up, do you agree with Giovanni Santostasi that Bitcoin needs mass adoption, or is it already fulfilling its purpose? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video and hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.